On Friday and Saturday, there was the Eucharistic Adoration Pilgrimage. This is an apostolate that was started by a guy called John Howard in Navan, County Meath. He used to be a neighbour of mine when we lived in Athlumany in Navan. And the house where we used to live was later sold to the Diocese of Meath, and we moved to Athboy. So this apostolate has been growing in Ireland. Beautiful apostolate. And many of my family is involved in going to adoration, part of that apostolate. So yesterday during the pilgrimage, my aunts came up from County Meath. I'm just going to play you a minute's footage from the adoration that was led by the Franciscan Sisters of the Renewal, so that you can see how really beautiful it was.
Eternal life, and I shall raise him up on the last day. For my flesh is real food, and my blood is real drink. He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood lives in me, and I live in him. As I, who am sent by the living Father, myself draw life from the Father, so whoever eats me will draw life from me. This is the bread that has come down from heaven, not like the bread our ancestors ate. They are dead. But anyone who eats this bread will live forever.
I suppose what struck me yesterday as personal reflection was to see my aunts arriving from the car park. And if anybody doesn't know Knock, you have the main car park and you're walking up and you have the Adoration Chapel as you walk up on your right, and you have the bookshop on your left. And we were there 3 years ago, May 2019. I remember we were there, we were all together, a lot of family came up. And yesterday it was like I was standing outside the Adoration Chapel and I was seeing my aunts walk up, the eldest sister of my mother walking up. She's in her 80s, and she was on either side of her, the women from the parish, holding her. She was walking, very elderly woman, very frail, and but they're walking. This bastion of the faith, this woman that would go to Garabandal so many times. She just loved the Eucharist. She was just she is just this amazing woman of the faith. This lady that nearly died giving birth once, and because of hemorrhages and so forth. And she always, I remember as kids, we used to always listen to her. Oh, you're going on about the faith, and we used to say, yeah, Auntie Nellie is her name. Yeah, kind of, yeah, you believe that, but it's not really important what you're saying. But she took it. She takes her faith extremely seriously. Today in Ireland, sadly, the faith has been the advertising of society has manipulated the faith to such a way that there's two ways that you can see the Catholic Church in popular society today. From one side, you have the evil sisters, the mother and baby homes, the tomb babies, and the abuse scandals and the paedophile priests. That's one way that society paints the Catholic Church. And the other way that society paints the Catholic Church is the Father Ted MacDougall, the comedy side. Sure, look, we're priests, but we don't really believe in that. Down with that type of stuff. It's all a comedy, it's all a charade. So you have these two images of the faith left in Ireland in popular culture. There are 4.5 million Catholics in Ireland, but less than 20% of those actually will go to Mass. And of those, the majority of those are that age. And it's kind of sad in a way for me to witness that generation go, because I still remember in the 1980s our packed Sunday masses. I still remember going to Mass in Delvin, Killucan, Athboy, Kildalkey, Beliver, those churches, that's my home. I still remember the packed churches. I certainly remember Athboy church being, jam-packed. Many times all the men sitting on one side, the women, during a time when we still used to have altar raise, we still used to kneel for communion. I still remember that. And yet when I go to Mass today, when I bring my son to Mass today, we went to a Novus Ordo today here near us, none of his peers are there. The church, the cathedral, is 90% empty, 85% empty. It's a different era. And many people are commenting, the COVID really has lifted a veil on what it means to be Catholic in Ireland. And you really think, well, what is Catholicism? What does this faith mean to us? And I'm just thinking, my aunts, my family that will come to knock now, my first cousins don't. My daughter was there with me, Laura, and she was helping to give out leaflets. I said, go and help a little bit. And then afterwards said, Daddy, isn't it nice to be able to help people? And people were congratulating her, but it does show the next generation will be a very, very tiny minority left in Ireland. And sadly so, because we haven't shown our love and our seriousness for the faith. We haven't challenged that generation to actually understand how serious this is. And it's obvious, it's evident when you go on pilgrimages. I mean, afterwards I was walking around the St. John of God Centre. I don't know if, for people looking at this video, if you haven't been to Knock, you have, as you walk up from the car park, you have the Adoration Chapel, you have the bookshop, and you come around and there's the kind of a rest centre where you can get tea and coffee, and there's tables there. And I was looking for my aunts, who had come to Knock. I think they'd made their way down to the Confession Chapel, and that was packed. There was queues outside of that. I think everybody that had come to Knock had gone down there, and so I couldn't find them in the St. John of God Centre. But as I was walking around, I was wondering, where will we be in 10 years' time? Where will we be in 15, 10 years, 20 years' time? Because the generation that is here today, and I looked around, they won't be here in 20 years' time. Like, I know my aunt won't be in Knock in 20 years' time. And that's very, very sad for me. But who is going to stand for the faith in 10, 30 years' time in Ireland? Which generation will stand for it? I know in the traditional movement, we will have a generation that will stand for the faith. But isn't it very, very sad that a traditional movement in Ireland, which has had to beg and borrow and fundraise for chapels around Ireland, it's very sad that the whole institutional church in Ireland, which has so many chapels and churches, over 2,000 in Ireland, couldn't, allow the space for the traditional movement to grow in Ireland. And, every chapel, if we think about the chapel in Limerick, the Institute of Christ the King in Limerick, that was a Jesuit chapel. The Jesuits used to live there. They had a community there. They sold it to a developer who was going to turn it into a nightclub. And thank God the developer went into bankruptcy, and the Institute of Christ the King were able to come in and buy that chapel. But it wasn't, the church didn't step in to say, oh, look, we're selling this off. The Jesuits didn't want it. It was God who stepped in and provided the traditional movement with that beautiful chapel. Same. Belfast was a chapel that was the Presbyterians sold. Athlone, the Church of Ireland, sold it to the SSPX. St. John's in Dublin, it was also sold the church in Cork. If we understand, if we look around Ireland, what's happening with the tradition movement, this small 5,000 Catholics, it's organic, it's out of love, it's, and really it's interesting to see what's happening in the church. It's interesting to see. And I suppose many of us are asking just the simple questions: what happened to the faith? Had I not, by providence, actually gone to a seminary in Rome and seen and been educated and seen the church and seen what was happening in the church, I probably would have lost my faith. For some reason, God just pulled me in a different direction and challenged me on this, and has kept challenging me on the faith. I never thought I would be the person that could put my voice forward to challenge Ireland on the faith, but I've done it, and I ask other people to do the same, to challenge the next generation, to talk to your kids about the Eucharist, to challenge them on what the faith is. And it's kind of critical in this moment in the church that we do this, because the world, society in Ireland, will always paint Catholicism in those two frames. It's infantile, it's a comedy, it's a joke, it's Father Ted MacDougall, it's effeminate. It'll paint it in that light, or it'll paint it on the other light. It's evil. It's mother and baby homes, it's pedophiles, it's gay men and Maynooth on Grindr and all this. That's what it is, that side. And on the other side, it's a joke. And they don't want us to look beyond the caricature. Often right, they don't want us to look behind the caricature of what they've painted and to say, okay, well, what is behind that? Let's go deeper. Let's go deeper into what the faith actually means. There's a lot of debate at the moment about Second Vatican Council among traditionalists and Catholics in the church. The Pope has brought it up about Second Vatican Council, about people not accepting the council. And I urge traditional Catholics and Catholics in general, the council is 60 years ago, guys. It's 2022. We're not living in the 1960s anymore. We're living in 2022. The form of the Mass that many people experience today is a 1970s style Mass. It's a product of its age. It doesn't represent what the Council Fathers actually wanted. We know this. There's not a word of Latin left in the supposed Latin Rite. That wasn't called for in Second Vatican Council too. So I do recommend that Catholics read what the bishops of the Second Vatican Council actually said, because I can tell you the traditional Catholic movement today is far closer to the Second Vatican Council than what we see in the church in general in Ireland, which are gone off on a tangent, I don't know, that doesn't actually come back and relate to Second Vatican II. So if I do recommend the Catholics move beyond that. I fully accept Second Vatican II. I do think, like Bishop Snyder says, there should be on the specific areas, some specific areas, that there should be more discussion and dialogue. But those are specific areas. One of them be religious freedom, which some people have questioned. But the majority of the documents in the council, especially Sacrosanctum Concilium, which is the document from which we have the reforms of the Mass. Guys, if you were to do an audit against Sacrosanctum Concilium, the traditional movement is more faithful to that document than what we've ended up in the Novus Ordo. As far as participation, as far as the use of Latin, which the council never asked the church to get rid of, it's completely disappeared from our masses. And we should have some continuity and some reverence in the Mass. But I suppose I'm just rambling on and here reflecting on, what I saw in Knock, a place I deeply love, my family, my aunts, and the people that came up for Meath yesterday, where will we be in 20, 30 years' time? Because they won't be here. We will be left to carry on the faith. My aunts, all very Catholic, but we will be left to carry on the faith. How are we going to teach the faith to our kids, the next generation? How are we going to challenge them on the faith? Because we have to move beyond the caricatures that Irish society has painted Catholicism with, which is one hand the evil, the abuse, the pedophiles, the grinder apps, and all of this, and it still comes out in the news. We have to move on beyond that, and the Father MacDougall, Father Ted caricatures. We have to move beyond that. We have to challenge people. I remember many years ago, there was a writer that I read in Rome, and he was called Henri Daniel Ropes, and he wrote a book called Death, Where Is Your Victory? Which was, it's a novel. It's a fictional novel. And I remember reading that at the time and, just being so moved by the faith. I don't know if they ever translated it into English. I hope they did. It was written in French, and I read the Italian translation. I read the book, and years later I went back and I purchased that book again, because it's kind of stuck in my memory. It kind of, Daniel Ropes there, he kind of stuck in me, the profound mystery of the Catholic faith. It was like, you can't run away from this, Robert. You can be lots of things in your life. You can fall into sin. You can fall into mortal sin. You can reject the faith, but you can't run away from Catholicism. And if you do, you're giving a victory to the one that wants to destroy you. And I suppose that book, that writer, Daniel, that French author, he kind of stuck with me. He kind of pushing the seeds into my mind of what the faith is. I mean, I've meditated on that. That book has had such a profound influence in my life. And do we challenge people today with the Catholic faith? That's my question. That's why I'm asking this video. What is, guys, the challenge that we are giving the next generation regarding the Catholic faith in Ireland? We've embarked on this synodal process in Ireland, which has 100% excluded traditional Catholics. There wasn't one representative yesterday allowed to give a voice. We do not have a voice in the synodal process. That was made clear last year with Traditionis Custodes. There was no consultation with the laity at all, worldwide, and yet we were told that document was pushed out and so forth. The document was mainly a response to American traditionalists. I'm not an American traditionalist. I'm a Catholic. We live in Ireland. The traditional movement in Europe is a little bit different. We want Catholic faith. We want a challenge to the next generation. So it's very interesting in the church. We're talking about walking together. We're talking about a synodal process. We're talking about dialogue, and yet they've started this process without asking us, without talking to us. How does that work? How does that move forward? And I challenge people to sit down and actually talk to traditional Catholics. A few weeks ago, I was down in Kerry. I was talking with the guys that came up from the Society in Pius X in Dublin, and they were saying they used to have mass on a mass rock in a field near Knock when they were doing their pilgrimage years ago. And for whatever reason, the archdiocese at the time managed to talk to the farmer, and the following year the farmer wouldn't let them at the mass rock because he said, "Oh, look, there's insurance problems here and whatever." They managed to make it so that they couldn't have mass there. Then there was that incident one year where they tried to have mass in the car park. And subsequently, thankfully, there was a little bit of dialogue, and the Archdiocese has allowed them to have mass in Knock now in the Adoration Chapel. Beautiful mass they had there, 2019, and again this year it'll be allowed. Where is the dialogue? Where's the dialogue with those who are overwhelmed with the change that has happened in the Catholic Church in the last 50 years, who simply cannot understand how we have stopped teaching the faith? And this isn't to do with Vatican II, guys. This is the simple reality. We have stopped teaching the Catholic faith. We've stopped living the Catholic faith. And I'm going back to my reflection yesterday. When my aunts are dead, that were there in Knock yesterday, which generation will carry on the faith that they loved? Who will do it? Did their lives, did their faith, does it not mean something to us? Because we can all see what's coming. We can all see that the faith isn't being taught, isn't being preached. There's no challenge to the next generation. The next generation can be challenged on so many things, but we're not able to challenge them on what or who God is, or who Christ is, or what the Eucharist is. Where is that challenge? The church wants to be inclusive and so forth. It'll end up being so inclusive that it will become irrelevant in Ireland. Because at the end of the day, if we're going down that path, why bother? I'm asking simple questions. It will be so inclusive, it will be irrelevant. And the church Christ never came to be, I'm here to. Christ never arrived to town. Now, guys, now you tell me what you want me to preach here today. What do you want? Christ came to challenge humanity. Christ came to give a gospel, a message, a good news, the kerygma, the way. Ego emi e odos. I am the way. He came to give us a way. He didn't come to affirm the way we were walking. As it didn't happen. That's not the way Christ did it. Christ came to give a way. He came to call us out of ourselves. That's the message of the gospel. And priests, sadly today, priests and bishops are cowards. They are cowards. They are afraid of the deposit of the faith. They are afraid to teach the deposit of the faith. They are afraid if they will say it in a specific way, they'll get on the national headlines and the bishop will be getting calls and so on and so forth. They are cowards. They are afraid. And being so afraid to preach the gospel, it has become irrelevant in Irish society. Unless we change this gospel to meet the world, the culture, the mores of this age, the ways of this, unless we change the gospel to meet the world, and once you do that, it'll just be irrelevant anyway. Why bother? Why bother with it? What will encourage people to encounter Christ once we have changed the Bible? Once we've rewritten the Bible, in effect, Christ is no longer the way and the truth and life. Well, you can have whatever way you like. If you think of that passage of the man who wants to be perfect in Christ, what do I need to do to be perfect? Well, observe the commandments and so on and so forth. And then at the end, if you really want to be perfect, sell everything and come follow me. And he went away sad. Now the disciples said, Jesus, you shouldn't have made the poor man feel sad. Sure, we could have done with a little bit of that money, that guy. Sure, he could come part-time and follow us, Christ. Like, please, don't be going shoving people away. Sure, we need more people. He could have helped us a little bit. He doesn't, he can be part-time. Christian, but he could be a part-time disciple. No, it wasn't. That's not the way Christ really operated, really. Did he? Like, if you think about it, he wasn't giving a watered down, inclusive message to us. He was giving us, look, you have to change. You have to change. You can't live as you lived if you're going to follow me. Am I getting this completely wrong? I don't know. Where is the challenge to the next generation on what Catholicism actually means? And I'm saying, let's forget about the Vatican II debate here. And let's actually go back to implementing Vatican II. Because I tell you, the traditional movement has implemented Vatican II far better than many places have in Ireland. I mean, it's simply the truth. I was there in Mexico at Society of St. Pius X masses at the beginning of Lent. Everybody in the chapel knew the responses in Latin. Everybody had a missal. Everybody's participating. The readings were in the vernacular. This is the Society of St. Pius X here, guys. The readings of the Mass, the Gospel, was in the vernacular so that people understood it, even though everybody had missals. I mean, to say that traditional movement has not listened to Second Vatican Council is obviously incorrect. Of course they have. It's a modern movement. Nobody's rejecting what Second Vatican II was trying to do. But what has to be rejected is what Second Vatican II never said. Never said anything about turning to the people to worship. Never said anything about destroying the Eucharist, destroying the faith in the Eucharist, destroying how we catechize. The stuff that we do as Catholics today that was never mentioned in the 1960s in Second Vatican II. The stuff that we're doing, that's what you have to challenge. Show me what you're doing in the parish. Where is that discussed by all of the council fathers in Second Vatican II? Where come on, where is it? Because Second Vatican II never said to destroy the faith in the Eucharist, but we have, in practice. We have a whole generation of Catholics have not witnessed what I would have witnessed as a child, the faith of those aunts, their faith in the Eucharist, how they knelt for the Eucharist, their love for the Eucharist. I would have seen that. There's a whole generation of Catholics that haven't seen that. And we wonder why are the young people not believing in this? How could we make it more infantile and more groovy and more 1970s so that they would believe and engage? Make it serious. Show that this faith is serious. That's what you need to do. That's what the traditional movement is doing. That's why there's plenty of families at the traditional Mass, plenty of young people of all generations. It's not going to die out. It's not going to go away. It's serious. It's deadly serious. This is our salvation. This is our eternal encounter with Christ. Anyway, I just thought it's important for people to understand this when we're talking about the faith. It's not about dividing the church. It's not about saying the traditional Mass is the only superior thing in the church. It's about looking at what the council was trying to do and doing an audit of what's going on in the church. This is the council document. This is what's come out in the church today in 2022. Who is more faithful to Second Vatican II today? The traditional movement, as it's lived, as a day-to-day traditional movement, is more faithful to the Second Vatican Council. Far more faithful. I mean, anyone that says otherwise, show me, please. I mean, and I'm talking about Europe. I'm talking about the English-speaking world, Europe. Look at the demographics. You can say in other countries, we could say, for example, in Korea, they have taken the implementation of Second Vatican II on a different way, completely different way, and it has worked for them. It hasn't worked in Ireland. So that's why it's important to say I'm not against what the changes that could have come from Second Vatican. I'm against what we have actually done. And I'm asking, where's the challenge, guys, in the faith? Where are we challenging the next generation? Because, in Ireland, we have we have turned the faith into, society has turned the faith into, Father Ted comedy, or evil sisters, paedophile priest. That's the image. That's the headlines. That's the advertising. That's the propaganda. And we have to put that to one side and show the next generation how serious we are in the faith. And just my thoughts. God bless. Take care. Bye bye.